limit as x goes to 0 of 1 over x squared plus 1 minus 1 over x plus 1 over x squared plus 4x. The first thing that we're going to do here is plug in a 0 for all of the x's. In the numerator, 1 over 0 squared plus 1 minus 1 over 0 plus 1. In the denominator, 0 squared plus 4 times 0. In the numerator, 0 squared is 0, plus 1 is just a 1, minus, and the second term, 0 plus 1 is a 1, and 1 over that as well. In the denominator, 0 squared is 0, and 4 times 0 is 0. In the numerator, 1 minus 1 is a 0. The denominator, 0 plus 0 is a 0. So we have the 0 over 0 indeterminate form. Since we do have fractions here, we are going to want to get a common denominator between those. The common denominator between 1 over x squared plus 1 and 1 over x plus 1 is, well, x squared plus 1 does not factor, so it's going to be x plus 1 times x squared plus 1. So we're going to need to multiply the x squared plus 1 by x plus 1 over x plus 1, and the 1 over x plus 1 by x squared plus 1 over x squared plus 1, so that we can combine those fractions together. I'm going to leave the denominator alone for now. Your first step is always to find the common denominators between the fractions and combine them together. So now we'll multiply the fractions in the numerator. Here we have 1 times x plus 1, that'll be x plus 1. In its denominator we will have x squared plus 1 times x plus 1. Subtracting. And then here we have 1 times x squared plus 1. That will give us x squared plus 1 over that same common denominator, x squared plus 1 and x plus 1. All of this is divided by x squared plus 4x. Now that we have the common denominator, we can actually combine these two fractions together in the numerator. Be careful with this minus sign here. This will distribute on both of these. So then when we go and write this limit as x goes to 0, it will be x plus 1 minus x squared minus 1 all over x squared plus 1 times x plus 1, and then the entire denominator of x squared plus 4x we haven't done anything with just yet. We can do a little more work in the numerator of the fraction on top, because this plus 1 here and this minus 1 here will cancel each other out, leaving us with x minus x squared. And that'll be over x squared plus 1 and x plus 1. And then the entire thing over x squared plus 4x. Now it will still be 0 over 0. We haven't removed that just yet since we have not canceled anything. The next step is always to multiply the numerator by the reciprocal of the fraction in the denominator. What I'm going to do is put the denominator over a 1 so that it looks like a fraction, so that we can reciprocate it and multiply it with the numerator. That'll give us x minus x squared over x squared plus 1 times x plus 1. Multiply that with the reciprocal of the denominator, which is 1 over x squared plus 4x. You flip it upside down. And we will now have limit as x goes to 0 of multiplying the numerators. We will have x minus x squared times a 1, so it'll just be an x minus an x squared. In the denominator we will have x squared plus 1 times x plus 1 times x squared plus 4x. We will still have 0 over 0 since we have not yet factored the 0 in the numerator is coming from this entire expression, and the 0 in the denominator is coming from this entire expression. Notice that neither of those are 0, so we really don't need to factor those at all. To factor that numerator, it's a common factor of an x, and actually to factor this term in the denominator, it's a common factor of x there as well, which is expected because x is going to 0, and therefore I would expect a factor of x, which is making the 0 to factor out and be able to cancel. And so we will be doing that in our next step. So limit as x goes to 0 of x times 1 minus x in the numerator. In the denominator we have x squared plus 1, x plus 1. Factor an x out, and we will have x plus 4. At this point, these x's that are making the zeros can cancel. There's the final cancellation. We will no longer have 0 over 0 in determinate form. We should be able to determine this limit. I'll just rewrite it. It'll be 1 minus x over x squared plus 1 times x plus 1 times x plus 4. Now let's try plugging the 0 in for each of the x's. We will have a 1 minus a 0 over 0 squared plus 1 times 0 plus 1 times 0 plus 4. In the numerator, 1 minus 0 is a 1. In the denominator, 0 plus 1 is a 1. 0 plus 1 is a 1. And 0 plus 4 is a 4. In the denominator, we have 1 times 1 times 4, which is a 4. And overall, we have 1 over 4.